I'm from a grimy era, let's talk about it. Gotta keep a pole, can't walk without it. Did some things in the streets, but I won't talk about it. Seen some things in the streets, but I won't talk about it. I'm from a hood that's thorough, they don't play here. And they don't play on these blocks, it ain't a daycare. A new kid gets shot every day here. I guess that's why my heart colder than the rain there. Now, Rick Ross and Young Jeezy were initially cool with each other. They worked on songs together like DJ Khaled's Brown Paper Bag, I'm So Hood remix, and Put Your Hands Up, just to name a few. But after Rick Ross released his single for BMF featuring Styles P in 2010, it seemed like Young Jeezy, who once was affiliated with the BMF crew, didn't take much liking to the record. Shortly after the release of BMF, Jeezy would release a mixtape called The 1,000 Grams, which had his own version of the BMF record called Death Before Dishonor. Now on Death Before Dishonor, Jeezy would say a line such as, how you blowing money fast, you ain't know the crew. Oh, you part of the fam, I never knew, which seemed to be a shot at Rick Ross. Now after Jeezy's release to Death Before Dishonor, Jeezy would do an interview with MTV and deny that that version of BMF was aimed at Rick Ross. Now Rick Ross would go on and say if Jeezy had a problem with him, he could call him because he had his number.
Jeezy, you know, he got my number, he know where I'm at.
And he also says the record BMF was co-signed by Big Meech. Now as it seemed like Ross and Jeezy was taking indirect shots at one another, it would be a video release of Jeezy walking through Miami with his entourage. And when Rick Ross' name is mentioned, Jeezy say, where your favorite rapper at? I don't see that nigga. After Rick Ross dropped the Summer Is Mine's track, which seemed to be taking shots at Young Jeezy.
How you feel about the Rick Ross thing, man? Where your favorite rapper at? I don't see that nigga.
Rick Ross would then respond to this video with Jeezy taking shots at him in an interview with Tim Westwood and said Jeezy played himself. Now the back and forth with Jeezy and Ross would continue until Jeezy and Ross ran into each other at the 2012 BET Hip Hop Awards. Now the story of Gunplay being beat up and robbed by G-Unit for his chain is a story that's been reported on several occasions. But supposedly Gunplay wasn't the only member of Triple C and MMG camp that got his jewelry took that night. Now supposedly during Rick Ross' altercation backstage with Jeezy, Rick Ross had his chains snatched from his neck. Now, according to Young Jeezy bodyguard at the time, Dread, when Jeezy and Rick Ross ran into each other, they exchanged words, and when Rick Ross stepped up, he snatched his chains off his neck.
Rose was like, what's up? Rick Ross took a deep breath and he stepped up. And when he stepped up, I snatched his chains off his neck.
Now, supposedly the situation happened so fast, it wasn't nothing anyone in Ross camp could do, including Rick Ross security, because police got involved and broke things up. Now, it's also said in a video with Ross and Jeezy altercation, when a mirror breaks, it's actually Jeezy bodyguard at the time who trips over another security guy while trying to stuff Rick Ross chains in his pocket, and that's how he fell into the mirror. Now, according to Young Jeezy ex-bodyguard, he says he actually snatched 5 chains off Rick Ross' neck, but when he went to pawn them in, only one of them was real. Now it turns out the chains that Rick Ross was wearing was some kind of high-end costume jewelry, and the one that was real, when he pawned it, he got a little over $3,000 for it.
4 chains was fake, 1 was real. Because I had a debate with Jeezy. It wasn't a big chain, but it gave us $3,300 for it.
Now, after the BET Hip Hop Awards, Jeezy and Ross would do interviews explaining their altercation. Now, Jeezy didn't give much details on what happened, but Rick Ross would do interviews and say that Jeezy had 5 security guards in front of him and 5 police officers behind him. And when they crossed paths, he tried to choke Young Jeezy. Now the beef between the Snowman and Rose would eventually be squashed by DJ Khaled or T.I. depending on who you ask. Now the two went on to record the War Ready song and release a video for it, and they actually cool to this day, and they recently recorded songs together for Almighty Black Dollar, Born to Kill, and 06, just to name a few. Now one thing I left out the video is when Jeezy and Rick Ross seen each other, you know they was doing a lot of what's up back and forth. And you know that's when Ross actually stepped up. You know, like, what's up with you? No, what's up with you? Yo, what's up with you? Like, what you want to do? They crazy, but gladly they squashed their beef. Now, Shyheim, the rugged child, is a rapper out of Staten Island, New York, who's known to have a close affiliation with the Wu-Tang Clan. In 1994, Shyheim dropped his debut album for Shahim, aka the Rugged Child, under Virgin Records, with singles for On and On, Pass It Off, and Ones for the Money. The same year Shyheim album was released, he will be also featured on his mentor Big Daddy Kane's 6th album, Daddy's Home, on a single Show and Prove, which featured Source Money, Jay-Z, and R0BBED. In May 1996, Shyheim released his sophomore album For the Lost Generation, which featured artists such as Smooth the Hustler, Trigger the Gambler, Killer Sin, and Raekwon, and he also made his movie debut in Original Gangsters. Shyheim would go on and act and play in movies such as The Preacher's Wife, Into Deep, and Robert Townsend's show, The Parenthood. Now, after Shyheim dropped his Lost Generation album and became somewhat a successful actor, Shyheim will find himself in a situation he might not made it out of. Now, in 1997, Shyheim will be in a club in Staten Island and thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, where he was attacked and robbed by several guys, where he got his face cut with a box cutter, leaving him to get 350 stitches.
I'm wearing $100,000 worth of jewelry, money in my pocket. I definitely think jewelry and things of that was the spark of it.
Now, one of the guys who were involved with the attack on Shyheim actually got to sit down with him, and these two spoke and put their differences and beef aside, and they still speak to this day. Now, after Shyheim went through the whole cutting situation, it seems like his acting and rapping career took a turn for the worse, even though he still managed to get a role in the Into Deep movie with LL Cool J and Omar Epps, and release his album for Man-Child in 1999. Now, the Man-Child album had singles for Man-Child and featured artists like Big L, Method Man, and Ray J. Now, around this time, it seemed like Shyheim was no longer just a young kid rapper rapping about situations he was seeing in his neighborhood, and he actually started to live the life that he was rapping about. Because not too long after releasing his Man-Child album, Shyheim will be arrested for robbery. On July 2002, Shyheim was sentenced to a year in prison after catching a second-degree attempt robbery charge. On November 4th, 2003, Shyheim was released from prison. Shyheim came home in the DVD era and got back on his grind, pushing his music, and put out his 4th album for The Greatest Story Never Told under Bottom Up Records. And he also dropped his Disrespectfully Speaking album in 2009. But that wouldn't be the end of Shyheim legal issues. In 2013, Shyheim house was raided and the cops found guns and drugs, a .32 revolver, Xanax pills on his nightstand, a scale, and plastic bags. Shyheim was charged with 2nd-degree criminal possession of a weapon and 3rd-degree criminal possession of a controlled substance. Now, while being home after being released on those charges, on New Year's 2014, Shyheim was speeding and ran a red light and crashed into Felipe Avila car. Shyheim fled the scene, where Felipe was pronounced dead. Shyheim would then turn himself in, and that same year he pled guilty to 2nd-degree manslaughter and was sentenced to 14 years in prison, where he served his manslaughter and gun and drug charges concurrent. But he will be released from prison in 2020. Shyheim is currently home, alive and well, and seems to be living his life on a more positive and righteous path, following his religion and beliefs. Now, in the whole situation, I feel like Shyheim definitely got a second shot at life, being charged with manslaughter, guns, and drug charges. He definitely could have got a lot more time, you get what I'm saying? And I also feel like Shyheim should be celebrated a little more, because he's very legendary. A kid rapper that was running with Wu-Tang Clan when Wu-Tang Clan was the hottest thing in the industry. I really feel like his situation, his story is really dope. But anyway, jump in my comment section and let me know what's your favorite song by Shyheim. Mine's is Man-Child. But anyway, if you're a fan of these old hip-hop stories, tell a friend and tell a friend about my page. Like, comment, subscribe, and more exclusive content coming. And I'm out. 1.